Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast.
I'm Capfields White.
And I'm Bridget Myers. We're longtime farmers market managers, educators, and consultants. Today, we're going to chat about establishing or changing your market hours.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, bringing market managers, participants, and policymakers together again in San Diego and online on March 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2024. Join us there, actually here, or from your computer to learn from experienced market managers and experts in marketing, fundraising, employment law, conflict management, and so much more. There are no better ideas and solutions than those that come from the farmers market hive mind. Early pre-order pricing is in effect until the end of this month, so click the register button on the homepage at farmersmarketpros.com and reserve your ticket now. Coming up so close. I mean, March, that sounds in an abstract way like it's far away.
Yeah.
But as we all know, time flies.
Time is flying when you're going through a holiday season that's
No
sucking
kidding.
up all of your time. So, yeah,
And
it'll be here
managing
before we
markets.
know it.
Yeah, it just flies by. It'll be March, just right around the corner.
It's a lovely thing to look forward to.
Yep.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. We have been hearing a lot of questions about setting market hours lately. Whether you're starting a new market, on a seasonal break, or just looking ahead to next year, it's a good time to discuss your market times. If you're a farmer or food maker, you'll want to consider this when choosing a market or sharing information with your market manager.
So everybody should listen. Don't tune out.
Listen up.
This is for everybody.
And sometimes you think, a certain time is working for you, and then that changes too. So
Sure.
this
We're going
might
to talk
be,
about that.
Yeah,
How
useful in
to
the future.
think about making a change if you need to.
Yeah.
So typical farmers market hours.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like weekend mornings
Yeah.
are probably, as a rule, where you see the biggest, busiest markets.
Yeah.
Weekday mornings, if you're somewhere where you're attracting maybe chefs.
Yep.
Some families and things, weekday mornings. And weekday afternoons, if you're kind of aimed at families and office or retail workers that might not be off of work until later in the day.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's kind of general rule, as we have both the market managers at markets that are all days and times of the whole week. So, yeah, that's kind of been my observation as well.
I do think that I love a morning market.
Me too.
We ran nighttime markets for a long time, or afternoon to evening, which means part of the year at least you're in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really vibrant markets. They're still vibrant markets. We've handed some off to other people that are running them. But me personally, I like a morning market. I like being up in the daytime, doing all that stuff, and then being done. But I will say that that's been tough for weekdays, except in certain situations where you can attract some chefs and things. But I think weekday morning markets may, in general, be working somewhat better now because more folks are working from home and their time is a little bit more flexible.
Yeah.
Not that I'm suggesting that if you're working from home, you're not really working and can just cruise out to the farmer's market. But I do think that a lot of those folks now have more flexible schedules where they can take a break and do something and then come back to it, because they're chained to their computers until midnight. But, just flexibility. It's always been the case that freelancers and creatives and things have that flexibility and will show up at your markets in the morning, even if it's a Wednesday. But I think there's more of that now.
Yeah, they're just saving time on commute, so they just have more hours of their day available to them.
True.
I feel like that's true for sure. And just speaking to some of our regular customers that come out on our Wednesday market, like prior to COVID, it didn't seem like there was that many folks that were working at home that were coming out. We got a lot of folks that were worked at businesses around there, like offices. They'd come out for lunch and grab some groceries and grab some food and go. Or families, after they drop their big kids off at school, they'd bring the little kiddos and shop. So that kind of thing. And then tourists, if you're in a tourist area, really any day and time of the week is great. Right. So that's really, we're lucky that at least our Little Italy market was that. But yeah, it's kind of different now after COVID. There's a lot more people that are like, oh yeah, I'm just going back to work, but I want to get my grocery shopping done now so I can just get it over with for the day. And then when I'm off work around 5 at home, I can just be off work.
Right.
So a little, personal boundaries and self-care kind of shopping during the day kind of plays into that. So definitely seen that in our experience.
I mean, so the key when you're determining your market hours and days is to know your community, the community that you're in. So, weekends are always busy. Saturdays are most often when the big markets are.
Yep.
Now, if you were in a community that was heavily Jehovah's Witness or Jewish, And so Saturdays are their Sabbath.
Mm-hmm.
Your Sunday market might be really busy. Other areas, we talked to the folks that have the big market at Pepper Place in Birmingham, Alabama, and they were horrified that we would ask, why are there no busy Sunday markets in your area? And it's because, they're staunchly in the Bible Belt and folks are at church. They're not at the farmer's market all day on Sunday, it seemed like. So they didn't think that would work. We see the same thing. I'm in Philly part of the time. We see the same thing in many areas of Pennsylvania. The Amish farmers are not going to come on Sunday. So there's not a lot of big markets on Sundays in those areas.
Yeah, so really not like ignoring those kind of facts when you're thinking about starting a new market or changing your market hours. Like take stock of who your community is and what they're looking for and when they're going to be available.
Right. Yeah. So you just got to know your folks, know who's around. So the weekend markets are usually mornings rather than the afternoons. I've seen a few afternoons, Saturday markets and things, but not as many. But deciding how early you want to go.
Yeah.
So Sundays may start later than Saturdays in many areas because you are kind of reaching for that after church crowd.
Yeah. Or just even if your community isn't at church, it's just Sunday seems like a slower paced day.
More of a sleeping in day.
You're going to have brunch, that kind of stuff. So
not taking kids to sports so much.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I mean, obviously I get up earlier on Saturdays, but just in general, like, kind of San Diego's up earlier on Saturday. And then on Sunday, it's a little bit slower start. Still very active on both days, but a little bit slower start. So typically, even our markets here, the Saturday markets open earlier, and then the Sunday markets are usually like an hour or so behind.
Yeah, I think so too. Weekdays, when you're determining your hours, when do folks get off of work? Are people coming after school sports? Is that a big deal? Mm-hmm. When do most of the people in your area work?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lot of retail and office? Or are you in an area where most of the people working in a retail situation are in hospitality? For them, you might want to start an afternoon market earlier because they may want to come get their groceries and they don't start work until 5 because they're mostly working restaurants and hotels.
That's definitely what I found when we had our Pacific Beach market. And if you've ever been to San Diego and Pacific Beach, if you've come to the conference, you've gone to the PB market.
That's right.
With us, so you know. But that market was from 2 to 7. And we were so busy at 2, like packed at 2. And then it would, maybe take a little lull like around 4 or 4:30 and then pick right back up in the evening. And it was just that it was a lot of hospitality folks or people that were like had flexible work schedules and they were going out to dinner that evening or something. So they wanted to get their grocery shopping done before they did that. Or they started work really early in the morning and they got off at 2. And so that was after work to them. So just adapting to your community. I always thought that was so funny. I'm like, wow, it's like packed at 2:00. And the vendors were always very surprised. Like there were shoppers waiting for the market to open.
That's true.
So that was, it was just the neighborhood that you're in.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So know your people.
Yeah.
And then another thing to take into consideration is, are there other markets in your area and when are they happening? So can you fill a gap? Are there only weekend markets, but there's folks that either work on weekends or they need to shop twice a week because they're buying a lot of fresh food and they need to get out more often? Are all the weekday markets in your area in the evening? Maybe there's a place for a morning weekday market. Mm-hmm. So looking around at what the other markets are doing in your area will give you a hint on what's successful if you're looking at the big markets, but it'll also give you a hint on what might be needed, a need that you can fill. Yeah,
fill something. And understanding that folks do like to shop more than once a week. So maybe you're not going to do it in the same exact location as another market, but you could be nearby like a few days away from that market. Yeah.
But think about how far apart you are. So you're probably not going to have the same shoppers shopping on Friday and Saturday.
Yeah.
But they'll definitely shop on Tuesday and Saturday or Wednesday and Saturday because they've run out of that really fresh stuff and they want to get new leafy greens and fruit and things and get it as fresh as they can.
Yeah. Yeah. Our market in the same neighborhood is on Wednesday and Saturday.
And people shop at both.
Yeah. I feel like that's a great spread. Yeah.
Yeah. Deciding how long your market should be overall. So this is always a big question. We get this a lot from new market managers or from people who feel like their market's not quite hitting. They're missing something. They want to know. They'll send out a message in our private Facebook group or something and say, how long's your market? What are you doing? So I feel like 3 to 4 hours, probably 4 hours is probably the most common that we see. Like we see some 5-hour markets like that, Pacific Beach 2 to 7.
Yeah.
We see some shorter markets, we see longer, but that seems to be the overall standard, and then people kind of stretch out or shorten from there. Our big market is 6 hours long on Saturdays, and it started out at 4. We started from 9 to 1. And then really what happened to us is we got so busy, we kept increasing the footprint of the market. We started in about a block and a half, and then we added on the rest of that block, and then we went a block west, and then we went a block east, and then we went a block west. So we ended up at 6 blocks. And then at that point, we had a very long market. We couldn't go any farther. We were landlocked. We could either go into the bay or onto the freeway. But other than that 6 blocks was it. And we were still getting busier and busier. And so the thought was, we could dilute the number of people on the street at any one time if we added time to the market.
Yeah.
And so then, much like adding length to our block, we added a little bit of time. So we decided to open at 8:30. And then we decided to stay open until 1:30. And then we decided to open at 8. And then we decided to stay open until 2. And we still occasionally have vendors or a shopper that will ask us, well, why don't you stay open until 3? It's still really busy here at 2. Some of that is dependent on our site, and we'll talk about that in a little bit about, taking that into consideration. But and also 6 hours gets to be really long. I mean, and that's a lot of times why people do shorter markets, is because they want to make sure that farmers and vendors in particular can staff it with one shift of people. If you have a 6-hour market and you have 2 hours to set up and you got an hour of breakdown, you have some drive time, you've either got staff that's in overtime or you've got 2 staffs, which we don't see often. I think most people just go into overtime.
Yeah, I think that's something to consider too, that we've thought about with hour extension. And, folks will say, oh, well, it's only 6 hours. What's the problem? It's like, okay, well, don't forget about the prep. Like, you have to pick stuff up. But the vendors, they're prepping food maybe. So they're starting. I mean, our bakers are starting or harvest. I mean, definitely harvesting. But our bakers are starting at midnight, So it's like, this is a very long day. And even our staff, the market's 8 to 2. But, our first staffer is there. She's there at 4:30 in the morning, and then maybe leaving at 3 p.m. So like, our staff's on overtime, even though there's a group of us. But if you have to split shift people, that gets complicated. So it's kind of thinking of those things when you're trying to set hours for your market. Our shorter markets that we had on the weekdays that were 4 hours, I think our North Park market was 3 to 7 when we were running it. That was a little bit easier. But then again, evening markets, the breakdown was hours and hours because we had to put all the barricades away, take down all the lights during the winter. Where in literally you're closing up at 2 p.m. You're just kind of like
dusting your hands off. Well, we have more backup
we have
support there
but
too.
we don't have lights and things like that. So make sure you're thinking about the entire length of time it takes to do a market in one day and what that looks like for you.
I do know some folks that run markets that are only 2 hours long.
Yeah.
And one of them in particular just swears to me that that's what her vendors want. They only want to be there for 2 hours. Now, to me, that seems crazy because you do have that travel time, harvest time, baking time. You've got setup time. You sell for 2 hours and then you break down. And it just seems that's not very much sales time to amortize the amount of time that you're putting into prep to set up and break down. But I mean, you do what your shoppers and your vendors find works best.
Yeah.
She swears that's fine.
Yeah,
She also manages about 8 other events, and I personally think she's just like, yeah, whatever. If they're happy, I'm happy.
Hey, I
Totally
feel you.
get it.
I get it.
Right.
So yeah, sometimes you don't want to push it. You don't want to force your hours on people. If it's working, it's working. So
yeah,
there you
for
go.
sure. So we do see some 2-hour markets that seem to make sense for the neighborhood they're in and the farmers and vendors that they have, and that's fine too. You just need to figure out what works best for you. Again, it's your situation, it's your community. Figure out what serves them best.
Yeah, for sure. And then what is your vendor mix based on your market time? So with morning markets, are you going to have more like grocery items, maybe some breakfast, coffee, things like that, a couple, non-food if you're doing like a weekday market. And then weekends is maybe a little bit more prepared food because folks are out and they're maybe in between soccer games and need to grab a bite. They're also getting their grocery shopping done. So you want to have lots of farms, lots of grocery for them. You're in an area that non-food does well, on the weekends, people are leisurely shopping, or if you're in a tourist area, people want to get gifts. So what's your mix based on your day and time of your market?
Right. And if you have an afternoon, evening market, you almost certainly, if you've got the capability, if it's not outside your mission statement, you almost certainly want to have a little bit more prepared food. You have your food trucks. If it makes sense, we couldn't do this for many years in one of our markets because we're in a heavy, heavy restaurant district. So there's no sitting down and eating at the market. But at all of our other afternoon, evening markets, we set up a certain amount of tables so that people could grab something from the prepared food vendors, eat, relax, get their grocery list together, then they do their grocery shopping and take off. Whereas if they went somewhere else to eat and feed the kids between that soccer game and the market, or they started shopping and then they were just too hungry,
Yeah.
had to go off-site to get something to eat. Would they make their way back? Who knows? So in terms of convenience and also a good opportunity for those prepared food vendors to make some money, it always has made sense to us that at an afternoon evening market, you kind of up your percentage of prepared food.
Yeah, that has been really handy. And I've noticed that some of our markets where our prepared food vendors maybe drop off kind of in a group for whatever reason, they just ebb and flow with it. If we don't have enough food there, our shopper count definitely goes down because folks are just too hungry. Maybe they'll come in and grab a couple of things, but they don't stay and they don't do more shopping if they're starving.
And that's affected too by where you are. So we've got a market that goes from 10 to 2. We're right next to a park, which is a terrific place to not only pick up people that are already in the park that wander over to the market, but the people in the market, it's a great place for them to take a break. Midway through their shopping experience, they get something from the prepared food folks. They have lunch. They come back. Yeah, that works out really well.
When you're setting your days and times, think like a market manager or like a vendor, but then also think like a shopper. What's their experience going to be during these times? Look around your market area. What is there? Some issues that they're going to have. What are some things that they're going to enjoy?
Right. Yeah. Is parking horrible at a certain time of day?
For sure.
Look at that.
Yeah. Traffic, things like that. Yep.
Farmers typically have farther to drive to get to your market in many cases. So they may not be as enthusiastic about a very late market. You may see less farmers. Although I will say we have a couple of afternoon, evening markets that we managed for a long time and that we transitioned over to a different manager that have always had great farmer participation. They've stayed there through the time that we were there. They've stayed on. They're late. They seem very happy about it. So again, if your community is really using your market to grocery shop, the farmers will do it. It may shift which farmers come to your market. We get some farmers that come a very long distance to our Saturday morning market who did not typically do the afternoon evening markets because the haul back was in the dark was so long. Although those folks do come on Saturday morning where they have to leave their homes at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to get to the market on time to set up and be ready at 8.
That's what I've said. I'm like, oh my gosh, when you guys leave our evening markets, you have to drive so far in the dark. And one of my farmers was like, when I come to your Saturday morning market, I'm driving in the dark, right? He's like, it's dark when I get to the market. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess that's true.
True.
He's like, at least I get to sleep in a little bit on the weekdays or on the weekday markets. So yeah, it just depends on who, which farmers are interested in doing which markets. So yeah.
And honestly, if you're making a priority of being sure that your shopper traffic is strong, whatever day and time you're doing is probably going to be all right.
Yeah.
So, and that gets us to who decides your day and hours. Shopper availability. That really should be your very first priority. I mean, that's what makes the whole thing work is are people coming and buying from your farmers and vendors? Without that, it just doesn't work. So shopper availability and input from them is important. Now, I will say, remember that shoppers may express their intent and not their actual behavior. So when they say, oh, you should be open an extra hour, I'd totally come to this market if you were open till 2 instead of 1.
Yeah.
We have heard a lot of anecdotal stories from market managers who did that and then, nope, didn't come between 1 and 2.
Yeah. Well, I think we just talked about this when we talked about surveying people. It's like take all these answers with a little grain of salt. Who are the people giving you this feedback? How many people are telling you that? Is it 5 people telling you that? You're going to change your hours based on 5 people? Maybe not. So yeah, thinking about what they're actually going to do.
Right. So you want to hear from your shoppers. When you're thinking about setting up a new market, you want to survey people in your area and do as much of that as possible before you decide. So hear from the shoppers. Your site availability may inform your hours and your day for that matter. There may be limits there. So again, we have heard from people that they would love to see our Saturday market stay open until 3 instead of 2.
8 p.m.
Whether we could stretch our farmers, vendors, and team that long, some of our vendors would be thrilled, but mostly that's a long day. But the other thing is we're in a really heavy-duty restaurant district. Like most of the retail in that particular neighborhood is restaurants. Well, they need us to get the heck out because they're going to start serving dinner. And by the time we close at 2, clean up the street, take down the barricades, they've got folks that are pulling in that need those parking spaces for happy hour and then for dinner.
Yep.
So your site is going to inform that. I just talked to a market manager. They're in an industrial park. They've got an undercover market. They use it all year long in a very heavy weather area. So they're in a building, but it's in an industrial park area. Well, they don't have access to parking Monday through Friday, 9 to 5.
Oh.
So that parking lot's full of the other tenants' businesses and employees and things.
Yeah.
They've got tons of parking after 5 and on the weekends. So that really informs what their market hours are.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider. I mean, our parking garage that we're pointing a lot of people to. It's not open Monday through Friday. It's only open on the weekends because it's like a county,
employees use it.
employee
Right.
parking garage. So yeah, I mean, that was built after our market was there. But yeah, that's definitely something to take into account. What does the neighborhood look like during the week versus on the weekends?
Right.
Yep.
Or what time of day? Is there horrible traffic lockup?
Yeah, yeah.
Polling your vendors, you just got to know how to phrase those questions. If you say, hey, do you want to get off earlier? You're sort of influencing their answer to that question. Yeah, let's close at noon. If you say, would you like an extra hour of sales time?
Yep.
Again, influencing their answer. They may say, oh, yeah, sure, let's open till 6. So you want to be careful about how you poll them, but certainly input from your vendors and farmers is important. We actually look at, especially a big market where there's a ton of vendors, we actually know which farmers and vendors sort of approach what they're doing as a business.
Yeah.
And they're serious about making sales, and they're anchor farmers or vendors that, a lot of customers rely on. So we have we wouldn't necessarily do a poll of 180 vendors at the Saturday market, but we would go to those 20 folks that we know are really serious about this. They're sales oriented. They're making their living doing this. They've got a lot of shoppers that follow them. We poll them sometimes when we're making a variety of decisions about the market, and we would certainly talk to them about if we were going to do a major change of hours.
Yeah. And also those vendors, especially if they've been there for a while, they kind of have their finger on the pulse of the shoppers because the shoppers are talking to them directly a lot. Like we talk to shoppers at the market, obviously, as the market managers, but they're probably having more interaction with shoppers, really, and like long conversations with a variety of shoppers. So they might have some information that's valuable to share with you about this.
Right. And when you're saying, do you ask 5 people? No, you don't. But if you have 10 different farmers and vendors that say, hey, my shoppers would like it if we started a little earlier, that's a valid level of input there.
Yeah. Pulling your staff team too. I mean, again, they probably have a lot of valid input too because they're talking to folks on the ground at the market. But also, do I want to sleep in an extra hour? Yep. Let's start an hour later. Does Tristan want to be on the street at 4:30 a.m.?
Not that much.
No, I mean, she happily does it. But maybe if we started an hour later, she'd say okay. But yeah, so just asking your team, maybe like instead of polling them or surveying them, like have a group discussion and kind of talk some stuff out because you might get some ideas from that discussion that you wouldn't know otherwise.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it also gives you a chance in that discussion to make the point to them that for market longevity, for this market to remain strong, financially sustainable, able to attract farmers and vendors that make space fees, that make payroll, the question needs to be about what are the hours we should be open that will maximize sales.
Yeah.
So what will generate the most sales for farmers and vendors versus how much fun is it to work at night? Should we close it when the sun goes down? Which gets us to consistency.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So just like parenting, no matter what you decide the rule is, you better just be consistent with it.
Stick to it.
Just stick to it.
Yeah. So whatever you decide, make it consistent.
Yeah.
We see markets that change their hours seasonally.
Yeah.
And some of those folks seem to have really good reasons for that, really good justification, and it makes sense to them. And for some markets, it seems to make sense, and they keep doing it. And if they do it consistently year after year, maybe it makes sense to their shoppers as well.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that people who have a nighttime market that typically goes till 7, but they change it to 6 during the winter, even though it gets dark at 4:30, I don't see the advantage to making it shorter. That's always confused me. It's dark anyway.
And people
cold
don't
anyway.
People don't get off work earlier in the winter.
Right.
Although I wish we did. So we could just go
That'd
to
be
bed
nice. Well,
at
I guess we
4:30.
would if we closed our market earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, but I feel like we changed
But a lot of people do that.
We changed winter hours one time. We tried it with one of our evening markets.
We
and
tried it with
just
PB and it didn't make any sense.
It didn't matter.
No, they kept coming out really mad at 6:30 because we were closed because we were open till 7 the rest of the year.
Yeah, and I think our vendors were like, yeah, let's close early. And then once we tried it, they were like, oh, this doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they were like,
This isn't helping.
we still have vendors coming out late. So yeah, it just depends. I mean, it probably makes sense to some people to have a seasonal. If you're in a place where like it gets really dark and like snowy and it's, like it would be very advantageous to be like shutting down an hour or 2 hours early. Yeah. Or like shifting to an earlier start time as well.
Yeah. So maybe that's an idea. Maybe you go, well, actually, you know what? There's markets in Phoenix that do that.
Yeah.
So,
for the
yeah.
heat.
So in the winter when it's cooler, they're open like from 8 until 1. And then in the summer, when the heat is really brutal, they move to where they open at 7 in the morning, but then they close at 11:30 or something.
Yeah, 7 to 11. I think that's downtown Phoenix's hours.
Yeah,
currently.
maybe something like that.
Yeah.
So that could make some sense if you're really making a significant climate shift. I think it doesn't make a ton of sense to change your hours based on when it gets dark because you probably can't change them enough to stay in daylight.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's seasonal changes. They frustrate me. They do seem to work for a lot of people. And you can change hours from season to season, but again, do that consistently. Mid-season, don't just randomly make changes.
And maybe just change it one season. Don't be like winter hours and then spring hours and then summer hours. And it's just and I mean, you're just going to confuse people into oblivion and they're going to stop coming. I mean, people get frustrated with hour changes.
Bridget hates retailers and restaurants that change their hours.
If your restaurant is open from 10 a.m. to 7 a.m. on Monday and then 10:30 to 7:30 on Tuesday and then 11 to 7 on Wednesday, stop. Just have the same hours. Maybe have different hours on one day, like Sunday
maybe
is a
Sunday
shorter
you
day or
close
something. If I see all those different hours, I go, forget it. Because it also kind of
because you literally do forget it.
Yes, we literally do forget it. And I don't really trust, if you're being that wackadoo on each day, are you really sticking to those hours? If you have a different hour every day, it just makes me feel like you're not sticking to the hours any days. And are you one of those places that closes when you sell out? Because forget it, I'm not coming.
Right?
I don't like those places either.
Consistency counts. You're building shopper trust. And so they need to know that. And actually, if you're changing your hours periodically at the market, you're also screwing up your vendors and farmers. They've committed based on certain hours. And farmers may have planted based on your hours. I know I've got this 4-hour market. Well, okay, all of a sudden now it's changing to 3 hours in the winter. I still have these crops.
Yeah.
I only have 3 hours to sell to people. Probably your sales are going to be down a bit. No fair springing that on them in the middle of a season when they've committed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we had that problem at one of our markets. It always started at 3, but it was kind of busy at 3. So we discussed, hey, should we, let's open at 2 and just do 2 to 7 instead of 3 to 7, getting all ready to change to 2. And then a bunch of our vendors were like, hey, we do a morning market in the morning on this same day. And so we barely get here on time. If you change it to an hour earlier, we can't come. They're like, and we've done that morning market for 20 years, and it's a great market. We're not going to come to this market anymore if you change the hours. And so,
we don't want to give up this market. We've already planted to supply this market.
We've been here for a long time too, and we have consistent customers. They're like, hey. So that's why it's good to just ask around and not be willy-nilly with the hour changes.
Yeah, you don't want to do this randomly. You make a decision, stick with it for at least the season or year that you're in the midst of.
Mm-hmm. Now, for us in San Diego, permit-wise, we can't. The city is we can't just change our hours. I mean, we have kind of a buffer on each edge of our market hours so that we can shut the street down and do setup and everything. But we can't just be changing our hours of the market too much because the street closure is not going to be in effect. So,
and I don't think it's just us. I think it's a lot of places. I remember the Queens night market last year. Remember, they kept hitting rain, and they would always have to close. And shoppers, especially, and some vendors on their social media would be saying, well, just do it tomorrow instead. Well, hey, my permit says I can be here on Saturday. Not that I can be here whenever I can get a gang together.
Oh, my gosh. This is why everyone needs those sweaters. Farmers markets don't just happen.
That's right.
When I saw those comments, I wanted to call him and be like, hi, do you want to commiserate about this? People are like,
want to cry.
Well, just do it in the morning instead of in the evening. It's like, hello, there's 100 permits, please.
Can't do that.
Oh, well, you guys all get it because we're farmers market folks. But yeah, so changes can't, typically happen. I mean, maybe you're on a private property and you can do whatever you want. You can change the hours every week. But really, to have people get in the habit of coming to your market, which is typically the whole point of having a farmer's market, is that you want your shoppers to be in the habit of regularly shopping there and getting their groceries there or making it a once-a-week place to go and eat and hang out and shop for gifts and things. You have to have that consistency.
This is the goal.
Yeah, they're just
consistent
lose that.
Attendance.
Yeah.
You're going to get that by being consistent about when you're there.
Exactly. And this is also ties into rain or shine policy. Be consistent about your rules and what you're telling folks you're going to do. If you say you're going to open at 3, do it. So yeah, but if you are going to make a change, I think we need to remember that we need to give lots of heads up to folks. We need to blast that information out even more than you think you do. I mean, just remind. You can, even after 15 years at our longest market, I am still always reminding people 8 to 2 every Saturday, year round, rain or shine, just repeating that because folks are busy.
Sure.
And so don't make it difficult for them to figure out when you're going to be open. Any changes need a lot of notice and a lot of reminders for sure.
And if you've done all that analysis and you've made the decision and you're going to stick to a new set of hours, you need to update all the things. So your website needs to be updated, your social media in that profile, even if you haven't had it there before, and by the way, just keep it there all the time. Whether or not you've had it there before, you need to make sure that the days and hours are in your profile of your social media accounts. Especially if you've recently changed the hours, you need to go into Google Business and change those hours. You need to change it on Yelp. Yep. You need to look at what other maybe publications or websites of things to do in your area have picked up your information and have it there and let them know, hey, this has changed.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's so many sites. I regularly, once a quarter, just kind of Google my own business name in incognito mode on my browser, and I see what comes up. The Farm Bureau, the tourism website, the trolley that goes around San Diego. They have a lot of people pick up farmers market information to share with their people too. So you have to kind of work. It's kind of a lot of work to get everyone updated on that, but it's very important so that your current correct hours are out there for everybody.
Yep. Yeah. Apple Maps. I got calls from people for 2 weeks about, this says you don't open till 10. I'm like, no, we open at 8. We've always open at 8. Oh, well, it says right here. And I'm like, says right where? Where? Please tell me what you're looking at. And it turned out Apple Maps was somehow behind the curve.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things just get picked up. Or if customers can make a suggested change to a listing somewhere, it's kind of like a Wikipedia thing. Sometimes customers can put their information input on there. And if you don't catch it, those sites might just make those changes based on what someone is saying is true. So hopefully it's not malicious intent, but, try to get that current and correct information out there.
I mean, so that's in the same subject matter. Even if you're not changing your hours or not establishing new hours, your market hours might be something you just need to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Just to make sure that it hasn't inadvertently gotten changed. What I'm seeing a lot still is I'll go to look for a business and it'll say, this business is closed permanently or closed temporarily. And it turns out that change was made during peak COVID and nobody ever checked to make sure it got changed back. Yeah. I know they're open.
Yeah.
But it still says that on Google Business or some major site.
Yeah, so it's always a good idea to double check those things and make sure you're blasting out that information to all your vendors, because you'd be surprised how many vendors will be in your market, just staying in your market, even though the hours have changed, but they didn't change it on their social or their website, and so their information still shows your old hours. So just say, hey, make sure to update the market's hours on your channels so that your customers see when you're going to be here.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
Good call.
Consistency counts. So if you're already established, we recommend staying with your hours unless there's a compelling reason to change. This is not a great place to experiment and change things up frequently. Please don't. Still, if you're analyzing why your market isn't living up to its potential, your day and time is a key thing to consider. So do the homework, make your decision, stick with it, get the word out, and then whenever they happen, farmers markets are always a good time.
Thanks for listening today. And thank you to everyone who attends Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, for supporting all the work we do at Farmers Market Pros to support farmers, vendors, and markets. Your conference registrations and online class and consulting purchases support production of the free content that we provide every week, year-round, on Tent Talk and in our private Facebook community. The 8th annual Intense, the Multinational Farmers Market Conference, is coming up before we know it in San Diego and online, March 4th, 5th, and 6th, 2024. Reserve your place now to take advantage of early pre-order pricing by clicking the register button at farmersmarketpros.com.
Thanks for listening to Tent Talk today. Please leave us a review on your podcast app or wherever you listen to Tent Talk. Let us and others know how you're enjoying the podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of Tent Talk. Connect with fellow farmers market folks in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros community. Follow us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros and find online education and other resources on our website at farmersmarketpros.com. Tent Talk is brought to you by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Tent Talk is produced by Leandra Hayes with original music by David Mead. Tune in next week for another great episode.